All right, we're back at you on the question of circumcision. A court in Cologne, Germany, did rule, in effect, that the children can't give their consent. Therefore, they need the protection of the state, i.e. the court, even against parents and their religious beliefs or practices that see circumcision as necessary, certainly with the Jewish faith and in certain Muslim sects as well. And joining us in the studio this morning debating the issue, the Rabbi Mendel Kaplan from the spiritual leader of Chabad at Flamingo and Thornhill, and Leslie Rosenblood, policy advisor for the Canadian Secular Alliance. A lot of emails. Joe says the kid has no say. I'm not circumcised, nor is my son. It's a form of torture. It was done for cleanliness. We now have soap. Rabbis disabuses of that, saying it was the covenant that Abraham struck with God, and 8 days in, the male is circumcised, and that's just the way it goes. So you're not really standing on any of the hygienic principles or latter-day whatever implications. You're just saying this is the covenant that you must uphold.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
Absolutely. This has nothing to do with any kind of scientific evidence. When I said earlier that I'm not concerned with other people getting circumcised, what I meant to say is my position here is not based on any kind of scientific research. My belief in circumcision is a 3,700-year-old tradition that God told Abraham that he be circumcised and that his children be circumcised, and that by doing so the covenant is established. And for me, the only question was, and will always be, is our religious obligation and our covenant with God. We're an eternal people. Nobody can explain the fact that the Jewish people have been around this long. And I believe Judaism believes and teaches that it is our covenant, our Brit, that is the foundation of that. And that's
so. In other words,
that's
the
my
court,
position.
You believe then the ruling, by extension, the logic is that the court is it's an attack on your religious freedom. And even to take it further, Jeremy says, it never ceases to amaze me the ignorance of certain callers. This is nothing but anti-Semitism. Do you think there might be something to it?
I don't know if it's anti-Semitism. I haven't interviewed the judge, and I don't know what their motives are. All I can tell you is that this has happened time and again, and every time we continue to circumcise our children. And maybe I shouldn't use the word circumcise. We continue to give our children the Brit. We continue to enter our children into the covenant of Abraham. And a law like this will only endanger us. It will not protect us. And I question whether or not the courts actually are concerned with the welfare of the child. John, how about the emotional pain of a child who wasn't circumcised? How about the shame that a child who's a member of the Jewish faith and everybody else is circumcised, and he isn't because he wasn't allowed to? I've seen that pain firsthand. I've dealt with the difficulty of adults who had to opt into circumcision because they were not given the opportunity to communist oppression. Is that not an issue? Is that not a concern? Is that not taking advantage of a child?
Rabbi, perhaps it's beyond your purview. You're a rabbi, after all, and not an imam, but how the Muslims would cite the same reasons, religious freedom being impinged on by the court here. Do you know if the Quran prescribes that circumcision be allowed, or is that prescribed by the Quran, number one?
As you correctly said, my purview is the Torah. Okay. I'm here as a rabbi only, and I can only speak as a rabbi.
All right. I wonder because, this might be lumping two distinctions.
I think you should probably bring an imam on the show and hear what somebody who represents the Islamic faith has to say. I don't know.
Leslie, you're not an imam, are you?
I am not.
Okay, well, let's go back to the phone lines. Here's Joseph waiting his turn. Thanks for it, Joseph. Good morning.
How you doing? Good morning.
Good.
I'll be honest with you guys, and I'm not an anti-Semite or anything like this, but I'm, first of all, glad I'm not circumcised. Secondly, this goes back, it's almost as ridiculous as not eating pork. We have refrigerators nowadays. A long time ago, someone died from eating pork, so they made it, no one eats pork anymore. This is 3,300 years ago, you said, Rabbi?
The Torah was given 3,329 years ago, and not eating pork has nothing to do with lack of refrigeration.
Let's be honest, cutting off someone's sexual nerve endings, because a long time ago they did it because of cleanliness, just like that emailer said, that is ridiculous that you guys would even worry about keeping such a thing going. I would think that you would have more respect for your child, and you would want him to have better sex. You'd want him to have those nerve endings. I would think.
Joseph, you've made a whole slew of assumptions that are really inappropriate.
I didn't make a whole slew of assumptions. All I said to you was, the fact that you guys don't eat pork is backwards, because the majority of the world does. And pork does go bad fast, and I can see it 3,300 years ago. They didn't have a refrigerator. So
all right, so you brought that point.
My dear Joseph,
they made that ruling. And
all right, well, the rabbi wants to disabuse you
Joseph,
of that.
To you it's very obvious, but it's patently wrong. That's not the reason we don't eat pork. We don't eat pork because God told us that certain animals may be eaten, and that's the end of the story. You're making assumptions, and then based on those assumptions coming to the conclusion that something is ridiculous. I think that's offensive and inappropriate. We do what we do not because of any scientific inquiry or because of something people decided is a good idea. We fulfill the Torah and its mitzvot because this is what God wants us to do. It is our eternal bond with God, and nobody is going to take us away from it. Many people have tried. They will never succeed.
All right, and I'm assuming the Muslim prohibition on pork resides in a similar foundation.
Again, John, I don't know. I can't speak intelligently about that. I don't know.
All right. Leslie, any idea? I'm guessing it was from the Prophet Muhammad.
I can't speak for either the Jewish or the Muslim faith. What I can say is that the key difference between, say, a prohibition on pork and circumcision is one is regulating your own behavior, and one is imposing a decision on another. So they are on separate moral planes and need to be addressed separately.
So you would rather have the court impose this ruling rather than the parents make the decision for their child?
Again, this is depending on whether it is appropriate, whether there is sufficient. I think the bar should be set fairly high. I think that if you're going to bar a particular practice outright, there need to be clear and demonstrable harms in order to warrant a prohibition of this sort. And I think we have to look very carefully at the scientific evidence to determine whether male circumcision is truly harmful enough to warrant a ban from the courts or from the legislature.
Let's go to Jason in Aurora. What do you say, Jason?
Hey, guys. Good morning. I think all religions are a little bit somewhat self-serving. And I look at the Catholics, and they ban they want to promote their population, so they're not allowed to use any sort of birth control. I see this as another example of a way to indoctrinate their youth. You circumcise the kids so that they're brought up in the Jewish community, and it's further to promote their offspring to become Jewish. I guarantee if the rabbi was brought up in a Catholic household with Catholic people, he'd be a Catholic right now, and you wouldn't be here sitting.
Well, I'll only say to you that I know of two people, children of people who were killed in the Holocaust, who were brought up in covenants, who found out, one at the age of 60, one at the age of 75, that they were Jewish. And interestingly, both of them returned to their roots and became observant Jews. So I wouldn't be so sure to say as I'd be whatever I'd be because I'm brought up. I believe there's something intrinsic about being Jewish. We have a special soul. It's a piece of God. Every human being has a soul. We believe that Jewish people have a special connection to God. That's the meaning of being chosen. It has no other connotation other than being able to serve God in a special way. And please don't take that away from us.
Right. And by the way, Jay, I did want to disabuse you, too, of the notion that the Catholics are only, practicing, they don't allow for birth control because they want to, swell their members. And I mean that in a nice way. It's not always about just having more of the faithful. It's also about the sanctity of life. Had to be careful with the double